It's our month. So it's I'm so excited to dive into all things voting, all things Latinx. I'm with this powerful panel that we're going to introduce in just a second. But I first want to thank all of you for being here, showing up. Thank you for joining us for the Your Voice, Your Vote panel presented by Vota Latino and Pero Like. So I need to present some powerful Latinx people, y'all. Like, for off the jump right here, Steven Garza, featured in the documentary, the A24 documentary, Boy State. Steven, I'm giddy, man. I'm a little nervous. I'm a fan of yours. You had me crying this afternoon watching your movie, zipping my capacito, dude. Kim too. You got us crying in these streets. So, Steven, so happy to have you here. We have
Glad to
Kim
be
Guerra.
here.
You already know. We have Kim Guerra. You already know what it is. Feature. You already know. Creator of Brown Badass Bonita here with us too. What? And then, last but not least, Daphne Frias, founding member, everybody, of the National Children's Campaign and founder of Box The Ballot. Founder, powerful moves. Yes. We repping our people, everybody. And I'm your moderator, Eli Vasquez, better like producer, filmmaker. So I'm excited to dive into it. But before we do, friendly reminder, everybody, check your voter registration. That's why we're here. The voter registration. So most deadlines are still open, but they're closing soon. But check out Vota Latino's Election Center. The website is linked in the bio below. So make sure you guys check it out while we're going through it. Okay, so with this panel, I want to hit you with some facts and figures and numbers that people may not know, which is why it's so important we're having this conversation and why we have all these amazing, beautiful, powerful Latinx people on this panel, is that 32 million Latinx will be eligible to vote in the 2020 election. 15 million Latinx are unregistered. 3 million young Latinx have turned 18 since 2014. And this is one that hits me. 60% of the Latinx community are under the age of 34. So this is why we're here. This is why we're talking. This is why we brought these people together and diving into to all things voting, all things engagement, because our generation is so powerful and the time is now. So I'm going to start it with you, Steven, if you could set us off, and then if you guys want to chime in on this question. There's a lot of new voters. So what are your recommendations to people who are first-time voters, who first time all this in their upcoming, this is their first election, and it's a heavy one. So what kind of recommendations do you have for those first-time voters diving into it?
Thank you, and thanks for having us. So first and foremost is to definitely check your registration. I turned 18 the day before the general election in November of 2018, and my voter registration was lost. I registered on National Voter Registration Day, the day of my birthday, 18th birthday, the Monday before the election. I called the office and asked them why I wasn't in the system, and they said that they didn't have my registration, but I had my receipt that you should have gotten when you registered to vote, and they said, come down and bring that to us. And I did, and they got me re-registered. Although unfortunately, the next day when I went to go vote, they said I still wasn't in the system. I had to vote provisional. And after that happened, the provisional ballot board 3 weeks later let me know that my vote wasn't counted because I voted in the wrong precinct, even though I hadn't. I got the wonderful people of the ACLU of Texas involved on my behalf, who investigated and came to the conclusion that I had been wrongly disenfranchised of my vote, had done everything right, and still my vote was not counted in 2018. The person in charge of voting was actually voted out that election, and the new clerk of Harris County gave me their guarantee that it would not happen again. And now they've actually instituted state or county-wide polling locations so you can vote anywhere in the county instead of your own precinct. So kudos on them for doing that. Second of all, get a voting buddy. That way you guys can hold each other accountable, and you guys can carpool to the polls. You guys can make sure that your voice is heard, that you have a plan to vote. Make sure you know, then that's leading into the third thing is have a plan to vote. It seems simple, you just go and do it, but actually look around, research the areas of where you can go vote. Think about long wait times in between classes. Do you have 15 to 20 minutes to wait in line possibly, or even longer? You know, we know that the governor and here in Texas is trying to restrict people's access to the polls, and they're trying to demotivate you. They're trying to get you to quit and to not stay in line. So no matter what, happen, stay in line, exercise your constitutional right to vote. It's very important that you show that nothing is going to stop you from making your voice heard in the most important election of our lifetimes this year.
Wow, that whole narrative and story. But hey, if we learn one thing, is keep receipts. That
Definitely,
is
yes.
crazy. But that's amazing with the change that you were able to make with your intention. Does anyone else have any recommendations for these first time voters that that maybe they're feeling a little overwhelmed?
Yeah, I love that you said, Stephen, like get a voting buddy and a voting study buddy. Like what I started to do in college is like we would sit down, we would go over the guide together, like the voting guide, where you go over all the policies and all the people that are running, and we discussed and we made a game plan. And what are your thoughts about that? Like we made it fun and have like a voting guide party, get informed and be ready. So when you show up, who you're voting for, what you're voting for, and where. Because I remember times like my brother, he's like, oh my goodness, first time, my little brother, he's like, my first time voting. He's like, I didn't recognize some of those names. I didn't know what a voting guide was. I didn't know. I just thought I was voting for the president, and it's like, you're voting for some more. So be informed and be ready and be hype about it. It's a privilege. It's a responsibility. And our voice, like Eli, thank you for stat. Like we are like 60% of us. We're like the largest, like I'm a bracket of people that we have can have such an impact in this country, and our voice is so important. So pónganse a perrear y a votar, y'all.
Yeah, I think what's super important, something I like to emphasize is like the term minority, which is often used to represent our community, that's only a mindset. Minority is a mindset. We get to choose how we define ourselves, and we know our power. We don't need anybody else to validate that for us. We already know how we be coming out in these streets. We don't need to tell anybody else. And I think it's important to remember that when you go to the polls, because the system is going to try to push back, and they're going to try to make sure that your vote isn't counted, that your district are redlined until they don't even exist anymore. And I think it's important to remember to like strap on your boots, come ready, and like come ready to fight. It's also important to remember, I remember the first time voting in 2016, it felt so stressful. I kind of felt like I had the whole weight of the world on my shoulders. Like, man, what am I going to do? How am I going to vote? And something that really helped me combat that stress was remembering that my vote is a vote for my community. That, I think of voting as an inherently hopeful act, and casting your ballot to be a selfless one, because we're not only voting for the things that we believe in, but for the policies and legislation that will impact our community and our people. Which is why my organization, Box The Ballot, we created voting guides to educate people on important issues like how to be a climate conscious voter, how to be a voter, keeping in mind undocumented individuals, so many different niches and communities that we need to keep in mind when going to the ballot. And I think that makes it so much more real, that there's people behind pieces of paper. It's not just filling in that bubble or checking that box. It's human beings' lives behind that ballot. And I think if we can keep that in mind more often, there'd be so much more power behind our ballots.
That's powerful stuff. I mean, such a friendly reminder. There's human beings that we're checking. These names are actual human beings, and I love not needing that validation. That's so important. I want to hit on the other side. We have people that are engaged, ready to vote for the first time, but we also have some people that maybe they're a little more pessimistic, and they say, we all heard it, voting doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I'm curious, and Kim, you can start us off with it. What do you have to say to those people that feel like their vote doesn't matter?
A lot of times, and I've noticed that like in my people, like my age bracket, I'm 28, people are so cynical and so distrustful of the government, rightfully so. Pero como dijo Daphne, there's lives on the line. Like you are acting out of ignorance, selfishness, and privilege if you decide not to vote, because there are lives on the line. Our lives and our communities' lives, and even people outside our communities' lives are depending on it. if yeah, get out there and vote. And if I could, I'd be a mom with the chancla, not with the chancla because I don't normalize hitting the chancla, but it's that important that you need to, it should not be optional. It's a right and a responsibility to your community. Informed, and yes, I know that the government is flawed, so much so, but by us not making our voice matter, by us not using our voice, we're contributing to that broken system. So if you want a better government, be active in making a better government. And that's by voting in better policies, policymakers, electives that for our communities. How we get a better government. Not by sitting it out and be like, fuck this shit, it's already broken. Be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Feel that.
I wanted to share this story that is really important to me. So in June of 2019, I actually became an elected official in my district. So I was seeing a lot of sort of disillusionment with my community. I'm a proud Dominicana. My community is like little Dominican island. We all here speaking Spanish. A lot of us are undocumented. And I understood their frustration, how they felt like the system didn't represent them, because for a long time I did as well. But I had to sort of think back and remember that I'm here to live out my ancestors' wildest dreams, right? My abuela, my abuelo, my tia, my tío, they didn't come crossing oceans to just have us be sitting here being like, oh, I feel sorry for myself. That's not why they did that for. They did that to give us a better life and to fight for a better future. And I know that I needed to take up the mantle to live out their dreams for me. So I ran for a county committee seat in my district against a woman who didn't speak Spanish, who had no ethnic background, and who tried to come in and tell me that because I'm disabled, I couldn't represent my community. And I told her, oh, really? Okay, we're gonna go for it then. So I knew my community had my back. I've lived in my community my whole life. And I was like, what you don't have is my people. And my people know me and they know what I stand for. So I went out every single day to our retirement homes, to the guy in the corner selling empanadas, to everyone I could, saying, hey, I'm on the ballot this day. Come out and vote for me. Come out and vote so that I can represent you. I want to know what you need and I want to help you get what you need. And we beat my opponent by 150 votes. And to this day, going into the ballot box and seeing my name on the ballot was one of the most emotional things I've ever experienced, because not only was that my name, but that was my ancestors' name on that ballot. That was all of their lucha, all of their struggle written right there. And for me to be able to cast my vote for myself when my mom was standing watching me cast my ballot, and right after she cast her ballot for me, it was one of the most emotional days. And this is why we vote, not only to sort of create a better government, but to put our community in government so that each and every election cycle, our government looks more and more like our communities, that we have people like AOC representing us. You know, you're not only voting for arbitrary people, you're voting for people who are going to speak your language, who know your struggle, who know where you come from. And if it wasn't for my community coming out and casting every single ballot for me, I wouldn't be here today. And it's been like the greatest honor, almost a year out, to be able to serve my community during this COVID-19 crisis. I helped get PPE for my community. I helped get food collection for my community. I worked tirelessly even while I was infected with COVID for a month, making phone calls, writing emails, making sure that my community had everything they needed. But the only reason I was able to do this because they believed in me. So we need to make sure that we go out and vote and tell our community members who are running for us that we believe in them and that we believe that they have the ability to serve us.
Wow, that is
powerful.
Powerful. Powerful. Oh my, remember that name, everybody. Daphne Frias out here. Wow, that is epic.
That was a spiritual experience. That was. I felt it. Thank you.
For real.
Thank you.
For real. Yeah, I mean, Steven, I'm sure you've bumped into many of people who may have said their voting doesn't matter. Is there any like go-to thought processes that you instill in them that maybe they need to hear?
This election, like any election, is a referendum on the way your community, your state, and your country is going, and whether you approve of it or not. Um, it's not just, you're not voting for your president and your senator, you're voting for your member of Congress, your county commissioner, your district attorney, your city council. In a couple of months, we'll have our school board elections that get often overlooked. And that's where you'll see the most change. The case that needs to be made to young people especially is that they don't see themselves in government. They don't see them represented in it. And therefore it is immediately thought that they do not have a role in it. Well, the decisions that are being made in Washington, D.C. right now by a bunch of 70, 80-year-olds who aren't going to be here to reap the consequences of the actions, but I will be. If the Supreme Court becomes a 6-3 supermajority, I will be living with the effects. If that happens this year at the age of 19, I'll probably be feeling those effects at the age of 50. Long after President Trump has gone out of office, his influence on the system will still be there in the Supreme Court, where he will most likely nominate 3 judges to. It is imperative that young people realize that they have a stake in this election. Their futures are at stake of this election. I understand a reluctance to support some of the candidates running for office, that they may not share entirely your vision. But I think that we, the American people, have been presented with 2 very different contrasts of where this country can go. It has been regressing for the past 4 years in a very major way, and has been regressing for much longer than that. And we have an option to get out of that regression and start making strides to go to that future that we all want for ourselves. It is the future of healthcare that's on the ballot this year. It's the future of education and whether or not it's affordable for those who can't afford it. It's it's scary to say that women's reproductive rights, something that should have been decided indefinitely and for all time, is on the ballot this year, is going to be affected. You saw the court with LGBTQ rights this past couple of days, saying that, well, maybe it's wrong, maybe we should repeal that. It's dystopian. It is terrifying, and I can't imagine what those in those communities must be feeling right now. It is very selfish not to vote if you have the power to, because it is the most important thing you can do that comes with the title of citizen, is to cast your vote for your future. Because elections do matter, elections do have consequences. If the past 4 years of this country has not been evident of the consequences of the disaster that the 2016 election had, in a economy that has gone down the toilet, of 200,000 plus Americans dead, of us being in month 7 of quarantine with no end in sight, with a president who says essentially that he will deny the results of the election if he loses. Those are the consequences of elections, and they're huge, and they affect people's lives. Family separation under this administration, all these awful things that have happened is a direct result of an election that could have been avoided. And now we have before us a referendum on the administration of Donald Trump and his allies in Congress and his allies in the state and the local level. And we have the chance to say no more. That's what's at stake at this election. The future of our planet, of our country, of our state, of our local communities is on the ballot in November. And whether or not you like any of the candidates, it doesn't change the fact that that's what's happening. You have one candidate offering a vision of restoring the unity in this country and of working together to actually improve American lives, and another one who essentially is fear-mongering and trying to scare people into voting for him again. I am going to do everything in my power to make sure that young people show up. The young people will make up 1/10 of the 2020 electorate this year. It's a huge voting block, and historically, young people have not come in droves to vote. And I think now more than ever, I'm very excited to see what they do in this cycle. I think that we're going to surprise a lot of people by taking a more active role. We have been in the streets for the past couple of months, and we're going to have to turn that activism into a huge block that could decide the future of elections from now on. That is very exciting to me.
That's exactly. I mean, that's clean with it, my friend. Yeah, that's phenomenal, and it shows the ripple effect of what's happening, right? I mean, if you didn't go out and vote for the last election, well, Trump's here and now he has the power that he has. So everything matters. So I'm so glad that you hit on that, so people could really find the breadcrumbs and see what this is all about and why it's so impactful to vote. So I want to thank you for sharing that, and I'm also curious. All of you are young Latinx. You all made the choice to be civically engaged. Like you made that choice, and hearing Daphne's story is really inspiring. And I would love to dive in more at everyone's stories. Is what was that moment like for you? What was that experience? And if you have any advice for someone else who's kind of looking for that, they made that decision and they're kind of looking to engage and amplify their voice as well. So yeah, I mean, Steven, if you want to start us off with your story.
Definitely. I was at the age of 14. I went to go see a then little known senator who was running for president, Bernie Sanders, and it mystifies people to this day what a 70-something-year-old white guy from the Northeast who's been in Congress for decades. Why does he inspire young people, and especially young people of color? He won in those demographics by a huge margin in 2016 and in 2020, especially among Latinx voters. So that specific his specific inclusion of young people being the backbone of his campaign, and the fact that we needed to work for our own future at such a young age was very inspiring to 14-year-old Steven. And it was also the fact that a lot of people who shit on communities of color and young people for not voting don't realize not only the barriers that they face in voting, like the barriers that I had faced, but also the fact that my family growing up did not have time to focus about politics because they were too busy trying to put food on the table, keeping a roof over our heads. My mom would work 2 or 3 jobs. There would be scores of days where I wouldn't see her because she'd be getting what little sleep she could while I was going to school. And when I came back from school, she'd already be starting her second job that day. She had no time to be involved with politics. And the most fucked up thing about that is politics is the reason why she has to work 2 or 3 jobs just to provide those kind of basic necessities for us. And, she came over from Mexico to start a better life. And as a very young, I realized that I had a responsibility to be that voice for not just her, but for the many people in our community who aren't able to participate because of their economic situation, because of their situations at home, because they just cannot legitimately, for very understandable reasons, cannot get involved in the process because the process makes them not be involved. And so from young, I knew that if I had the means to do so, that I would be an advocate and a voice for them. And that's how I started deciding to get involved with electoral politics.
That's amazing. Yeah, super phenomenal stuff. I mean, it's crazy how at 14 you were engaged and realized that there's this vicious circle. And I'm glad you brought up the limitations that is on these people and the struggle of survival that so many people have to go through. But this is the product of that. So I wanted to thank you for sharing that perspective. It's so real and something to acknowledge of what everyone's going through. Like same thing with here is my family that dealt with the same thing to like, I don't know about voting, I have to feed you. So that's great that you brought that up. Kim, like I'm curious, like what was that moment for you like when you wanted to be engaged?
Very similar to Steven. Growing up, you were in constant survival mode. You saw your parents in survival mode. My parents growing up were undocumented, so it was not an option. So they were like, this is not for us. And voting, being involved in politics was seen as a white people thing. It was seen as, this is, our voice, our language, our people. aren't at that table, we're not invited, we're not wanted, they're doing everything they can to keep us from getting to that table and from eating that bread that we're working 3-4 jobs to eat. And so growing up, I was scared. I'm like, it was like an unknown language, like voting, politics. Like, yo no sé, me da miedo, ¿qué hago? ¿Quién voto? You know, and it wasn't until I got to college, and I went to Cornell, and I was in a class where the professor asked, like, raise your hand if your parents make over 200,000. The majority of the people in that room raised their hand. And then they asked, raise your hand, you know, the lowest bracket, if your parents make under this. And I was like, eh. And I looked around, I was like 1%. I was like, my friend and I were the only ones that raised our hand. And we're like, so then I saw how the people in power, like and then they asked, like, who are you most likely to vote for? They're voting for their people. They're voting for themselves. They knew the language. They knew what to do. They knew the policies. Their parents, my friend's boyfriend's dad was running for Congress. And I was like, Montana, Republican. And I was like, okay, I need to get informed, and I need to make sure my voice is also included, because I raised my hand in that classroom and I saw how alone and my community and I felt so isolated and so removed. So I knew I had a responsibility, because I'm like, I know I come from the hood and these people have no idea what the hood's like. And I'm like, I'm here in a place, and I'm like with the congressman's son having dinner. I need to know what the hell I'm talking about and voting for. And I don't care who your daddy is. So that's how I started. And then, you know, growing the platform Brown Badass Bonita, I was like, okay, I have a more of a responsibility to get my community involved, to start these conversations, not just for myself, not for my community, but for my family, for their families, like knowing that we have a growing and collective voice and power. And one of the biggest things is like getting informed and growing in our knowledge and education, but also in our confidence. Like Daphne, that you had the confidence and you had the to go and put yourself on that ballot and win. Like that is the goal, to grow. And once we know we have that power, we act upon it. And it's a responsibility. Like one of the things I say, like Mija, being politically involved, that's one of the things I wish I heard as a daughter. It's like, we need to be politically involved. It's a right and a privilege, responsibility. Y es algo que debes de hacer. Like, let's, I want that conversation to be happening. Not when we're like in a moment like, oh shit, but in like the dinner table growing up.
For sure. Yeah, most definitely. And you hit on it. I'm glad you made that decision. Daphne, such a powerful story, but I'm curious, what was that moment for you that started all of this, this crazy roller coaster?
Well, baby Daphne has been out here doing the most since day one. So, I was born not to like to my own harm, but I was born at 27 weeks. I was 1 pound 3 ounces and a 25% chance survival. Made it here. I'm here, and I obviously don't remember those moments of clinging on to life, but I know that was within me, and I was like, somebody out there in the universe said, you're destined to be here. So I'm gonna make every moment count. And being disabled, you live your whole life being an advocate. You have to advocate for yourself at every step of the way, because we live in a society that doesn't see equal opportunity for people with disabilities. And my mom, being the strong Latina she is, she said, you're not gonna have a second to feel sorry for yourself. You're not gonna have a second to cry. You're gonna be doing those chores. You're gonna be going to the best school. You're gonna be doing everything that you possibly can, whether it's on 4 wheels or 2 legs, it doesn't matter. And I'm so grateful for her poder to like just push me to be able to do that, because I took that with me to this day. And, you know, I was the only special education student in general education classrooms. So I was the only student with accommodations in a sea full of quote unquote regular students. And I said, okay, well, everybody's going to know who I am. And, you know, I saw education as a tool to decide how people saw me instead of people deciding how they saw me. And, you know, I strove to be the most articulate in the room, to be 2 steps, 3 steps ahead, because I knew that the way that people were going to perceive me as a young Latina disabled person, I fit every single stereotype and every single trope that there could possibly be. So I said, okay, I'm going to take those misconceptions that you have of me and I'm going to turn them on their head and I'm going to surprise you every step of the way. And that's led me to where I am now. Born and raised in West Harlem, I saw fluctuations of gang violence and violence against my people my whole life. And it became the norm for me. I didn't realize that there was like another way to live, that people 20 minutes away from me were not living that life. And you know, in New York City where I live, in one of the wealthiest cities in the country, that I could be living in the hood where people were dying every single day, but you know, 15 minutes away from me, people were having dinners costing thousands of dollars, which is the most insane thing to me. Um, and I said, when I started organizing for the first time, after the Parkland shooting, it was literally the most organic thing ever. I got together with one of my friends and I said, hey, do you want to go to the nearest March for Our Lives with me? And she said, yeah. It was an hour away. And one conversation turned into 175 students. And out of nowhere, I became the leader of those students. I had never organized before. I had no idea how to get all these people to and from, but everybody believed in me and everybody trusted me. They said, we know you got this. So I took their power, their belief in me, and I did it. But I ran through so many obstacles trying to organize that event. You know, I was trying to get accessible accommodations for transportation. And the difference between a non-accessible bus and an accessible bus was $500. When you're a grassroots organizer, $500 is a lot of money. Um, and, you know, being a young woman, I was constantly turned away by vendors and people who we needed to be able to, you know, utilize to get to these events. And I was like, you know, if I'm facing this obstacle, then I think I'm a pretty resilient person. Imagine somebody who wants to get into organizing and are facing these obstacles from the jump, they're not going to continue doing this work. So, and I knew that my narrative and my communities weren't being represented in these movements. And I was like, that's messed up. Like, that needs to change. And, you know, I'm always the type of person, instead of waiting for somebody to fix the problem, I'm going to fix the problem. And
Nice.
you know, I got together and I caught that organizing bug and it's been with me ever since. And something that's like so important to me is healthcare and the access to healthcare that nuestra comunidades are constantly facing. You know, we're predisposed to grave health conditions like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, um, just because of the communities we live in. And people don't understand how racism plays into city organizing, city planning, and how these things are sort of predestined for us. So from the age of like 11, 10, I decided I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be the best doctor. I'm going to be one of the first disabled doctors, first disabled Latina doctors out there. And I'm happy to say that I'm a first year medical student at Johns Hopkins University, getting my master's in public health and my MD at the same time, one of the best medical schools in the country. And I'm here doing it for my community. And, you know, reaching those levels of higher education are unheard of for our people. And I'm making sure that in every lecture, we're talking about racism. In every lecture, we're learning about health disparities in our communities. I'm taking Spanish and medicine, learning how to be able to translate for my patients. Things like that are so important. I've been already treating patients that have needed translators and the facilities didn't have translators available to them. And because I'm working on those floors, they now have access to people who understand them and who believe in them, and I can help them through these journeys. And this is why taking on sort of the stories of our community is so important, because every step of the way you create a easier path and a path for representation for all of us. So if you ever feel, I know you asked what would your advice would be. I always say fighting for change starts with conversation, and it starts with questions. You'd be so surprised how many people are feeling the same tiredness, the same weight, and the same sluggishness that we all feel. Start by having conversations safely via Zoom now because of social distancing, but start by having those conversations via text or phone, and ask your community members, what are you frustrated about? What do you feel? How can we help you? And by starting those questions, you create instant community, and community is always the way forward. Together, you are so much more powerful than apart. And once you create that community, the sky's the limit, and organizing is right there within your hands reach.
Wow, Daphne, once you go right for president, I'm voting for you. Let me know Daphne, if you got merch now, let me know. I will invest in a T-shirt. We'll all get a T-shirt.
Merch, girl. I'm your merch for your campaign. Just let me know.
Yes, Daphne. I don't know how to even transition out of that. I mean, this just everyone on this panel so powerful. So everyone's perspective is so unique. And on that note, I want to thank everyone for being here. Honestly, hearing everyone's stories, hearing everything that everyone has said in perspective inspired me, and I'm sure inspired everyone on this panel. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today, the panel, everyone that's watching. I'm sending you off with a reminder. Head to Voto Latino Election Center. The link is in the bio. Check it out. Just a little bit about the Voto Latino Election Center. It makes it easy for users to request mail-in ballots, to create a voting plan, and to understand what's on the ballot for every local and state election. Visit votolatino.org/election center to visit our election center, and feel free to distribute the resource to your network, to tios, to everybody. So let everybody know what's up. Again, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Voto Latino, Pero Like, and go with it. Let's get after it, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Kim and Steven.
Thank you, guys.
Daphne and Steven, you guys are amazing, giving hope and like fire, because you are so inspired by you, both of you.
Thank you, both of you too.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great one. Bye.